It would be nice to be able to quit the game, so in this video we're gonna be focusing on creating this confirmation pop-up. Here you can either press no and this pop-up will go away, or you can press yes and you will go to the main menu. And if you press quit button on the main menu, the same pop-up will appear but with different text message, and now when you click on yes, the game will shut down. Here I have a confirmation pop-up opened. First of all, I've created a dynamic delegate called f on confirm pop-up delegate. The concrete logic will actually be bound to this delegate and will be executed when we press yes on the pop-up. Then I have two forward declaration, one for button and another one for text block. Then I have a use struct called f confirmation pop-up setup, one variable for description text, and the second one for confirm delegate. Then I have a user widget class called confirmation popup. It is also marked as abstract. Inside public section I only have one function. It is called setup popup, which is also blueprint callable. So you can use this popup inside blueprints as well. Then in protected section I have native construct and native destruct. Then a T object pointer for confirm button, for cancel button, then a T object pointer for description text block, and finally we have fade in animation. This is actually a widget animation, so we are using bind widget anim tag here. This bind widget anim tag works very similar to bind widget meta tag, but it will be looking for widget animations. Then in private section I have on confirm button pressed function and on cancel button pressed function, and finally I have a confirm delegate here. So inside CPP file I've added all required includes, and the native construct I bind on confirm button press to confirm button and on cancel button press to cancel button. Then I check if we have a valid fade in animation, and only then I play this animation. In native destruct I unbind functions, and in setup popup I simply check if we have a valid description text block, then I set provided text to it. And then I set confirm delegate to provided delegate. And when we click on confirm button pressed, I simply execute confirm delegate if it's bound. And then I remove from parent. And on cancel button pressed, I simply remove from parent. For confirmation pop-up widget blueprint, I created a separate folder called pop-ups. And inside this, I click user interface, widget blueprint, and selected confirmation pop-up, like we already did with others widget. Now the widget itself is not very complicated. Like always, we have a root overlay and a background blur with 3s blur strength. Then I have another overlay for this panel, a background image, in my case it is called t underscore main panel 03. And then I have another overlay, and this time it has 20s paddings. Then we have a text block, and the reason we added another overlay here, so when we type a really big text, the background is automatically resized. So it is uniformly aligned and looks correct. Now we can remove this text. And then I have a horizontal box with a bottom align. And this horizontal box simply has two buttons, one for yes and second one for no. We already did buttons like this, so I simply copied it from different widgets. And yeah, that's it. I don't have any logic inside graph. And the most interesting part was animations. For this I clicked this animations button and click on plus here. And right now let's create a test animation. But you should call it fade in anim because I already have it. I called new one a test. So the original one looks like this. And I'll be making the same button test so you can see how I did it. First of all, I click on this animation, selected 120 FPS, then clicked on this overlay, click on this button and selected this overlay here. Then I clicked on this plus button and selected render opacity. By default, I set it to 0, and after about 0.5 seconds, I set it back to 1. And now when you press play, you will see this animation, and this is exactly the same how my original one looks like. And that's how easy you can make your animations inside widget blueprints. And now let's delete this test animation. And that's it. We're gonna use this confirmation pop-up in several places, so it made sense to add this confirmation pop-up default class to globally accessible place. So I selected asteroid game instance for this and added the subclass of uConfirmation pop-up and the getter function for this. So this getter function simply returns this default confirmation pop-up class. Then I opened BP game instance and assigned WBP confirmation pop-up to confirmation pop-up class. Now we would like to have a way of creating confirmation pop-up, but we don't really wanna do the same repetitive logic every time we would like to create a confirmation pop-up. So ideally we would like to have a simple function that returns a confirmation pop-up based on pop-up setup. And that's exactly the reason why I've added this show confirmation pop-up function. And this function is actually static and also globally accessible in blueprints, because this is inside blueprint functional library. And let me show what I mean here. Here I have a widget blueprint escape, and now I can type show confirmation pop-up, and you will be able to see this function that is actually inside our asteroid UI utils. And this is actually very similar to how Unreal Engine created its default functions like getPlayerPawn. And the only difference is that this getPlayerPawn is inside gameplay statics function library and our show confirmation pop-up inside asteroid UI utils. And that's how you can use blueprint functional library inside Unreal Engine. So now we can discuss what I added to this show confirmation pop-up function. First of all, it is marked as blueprint callable because we would like to call it in blueprints, obviously. Then I have a custom category and a meta tag called world context that is actually has world context object name. This name in these parentheses should be the same as you specify here. This world context meta tag is simply grabs the world context object from the place you are calling this function. So for example, if we call this show confirmation pop-up here, you won't be able to see this world context object, but it will be automatically the same world that WBP escape widget has. And when you are using this function in the code, you have to explicitly provide this world context object. So this meta tag works only for blueprints. Okay, and now in CPP file, first of all, I try to get a game instance, and if you don't have a valid game instance, I return null pointer. Then I try to get a pop-up class from this game instance, and the same way, if you don't have a valid class, we return null. Then I try to get a player controller, and then I try to create a pop-up based on this pop-up class, and the owner is player controller. Then I call this setup pop-up with this provided in pop-up setup. Then I set a custom z index. In my case, I selected 100 because it is big enough for our project. And then finally I added this pop-up to the viewport, and then I returned it. And that's it. Now let's take a look at blueprint usages. Here I have WBP escape, and first of all I clicked on quit button and scrolled to bottom and selected this on click delegate. Inside this on clicked, I called this show confirmation pop-up and drag this pin and type make. This should create this new node, and inside this new node for description text I provided a string ID from our ST asteroid. And then I drag this confirm delegate and type custom event and call it return to main menu, and this callback simply opens level by object reference, so we don't have much logic here. Now let's return it, and that's how you can use this pop-up inside blueprints. So you just call this show confirm pop-up, and you create any delegate you want with any custom logic. So now when we press play and press escape and try to press quit, we should be able to see this delegate, and now you can put a breakpoint here and click yes. And as you can see, this function was triggered. And now we are inside main menu. Let's take a look at C++ usage now. Here I have main menu widget opened, and I've added a forward declaration for uButton, and I use this uButton st object pointer and call it quit game button. Then I have a ufunction called onQuitGameButton clicked and another ufunction called onQuitGameConfirmed callback. Inside native construct, I bind this quitGameButton click to onClick delegate for quitGameButton. In native destruct, I unbind it, and this onQuitGameButton clicked has confirmation pop-up setup, and I bind on quit game confirm callback to this confirm delegate that is inside confirmation pop-up setup. Then I set a localized description text, and I call our asteroid UI utils and this show confirmation pop-up, and I provide this as a world context object and this created pop-up setup. So now when we confirm or press yes button inside confirmation pop-up, this callback function will be executed, and this function simply calls quit game function inside uKeysmith system library. So as you can see, you can open this Keysmith system library and you will be able to see that this is actually a blueprint functional library. So this should quit our game, and also ensure that you have a valid include for this. Great, now we can play the game and quit the game. And everything seems to be working fine. Great, now I have a small homework for you. You can open our old restart level widget and make it prettier, because you already have assets for this, and you can also add support for this quit button like we did in escape.